Welcome to the Beau Show, an Epoch TV program. For those of you watching on social channels, just know that you'll now only be able to watch my show in its entirety on NTD or Epoch TV. I would love for you to join me there. If you watch my show regularly, you know that I reference clinical psychologist Jordan Peterson quite often. I became compelled by his work and his books, especially the book 12 Rules for Life, an Antidote to Chaos. Peterson became widely known after an interview with the BBC's Kathy Newman, in which he put on a clinic, literally, whereby he got her so mentally pretzeled that she couldn't find her way. This was in response to the government of Ottawa mandating certain speech, such as transgender pronouns. It's not that Jordan Peterson objected to a student wishing to be called a certain name, so much as it is that the government mandated it, which goes beyond government's reach. So he became this figurehead for freedom. He began touring in the United States with lectures. And recently, I was able to see one of his first tour stops in the post-pandemic era. The thing about Peterson's lectures is that they are truly lectures. It's like being in his psychology class. The second element is that no two lectures are the same. The lecture that I saw may be referenced in some ways in other lectures, but they will not be identical. So what I aim to do today, in many ways, is to do a lecture about a lecture. I don't want to just give you a summary of what he said. I would rather you go see it for yourself. You'll learn something. But there are phenomena that he touched on that had a direct and profound resonance with me. And I feel like I can take those concepts and present them to you in an identifiable, palpable way. Peterson's pre-show music is all classical music, and the classically trained musician in me appreciated that. It gives a certain elegance and decorum to what you're about to see. But music will be a defining feature of his lecture, and in turn, what I want to talk to you about today. This lecture by Peterson touches on two of the rules in his new book, Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life. Those two rules are the following. Number 2, imagine who you could be and then aim single-mindedly at that. The other rule he references is number 3, do not hide unwanted things in the fog. A big overarching theme of Peterson's books and lectures is the juxtaposition of chaos and order, and how our lives find the balance between the two. You don't want too much order, but you also don't want too much chaos. So you have to navigate that. Peterson references many different religious backgrounds for this, such as the Tao and the yin and the yang. If you have too much security and order, you get the Oedipal fantasy, if you recall the story of Oedipus and his relationship with his mother. If you get too much chaos, well, your life just falls apart. So there is balance. Another religious background Peterson references comes from Judaism and Christianity, which is the story of Jacob's ladder from Genesis, as Jacob has a dream about this ladder that connects earth with heaven, where angels are ascending and descending. There are several interpretations of this dream, but it seems that having this vertical ladder or a bridge between our world and heaven is the common theme, where our earthly bodies have a bridge to souls that ascend the ladder. And in this sense, Jesus would represent the common denominator and the medium between heaven and earth, since he was both man and God at the same time, of course. Now, all major religions have a grand narrative and some sort of connection between our earthly bodies and world and something divine that transcends us. This is highly detailed in the book A History of Religious Ideas by Mircea Eliade. Postmodernists, often the target of many Peterson lectures, hate the idea of a grand narrative because grand narratives give us all meaning, and meaning is what defines our lives. When you think about Richard Dawkins, one of the most famous atheists of our time, he himself cannot ascribe any meaning to life because he believes that there is no grand narrative. There is no higher power. Thus, what is the point of life, or anything for that matter? The Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung once said that you should think about the myth you're living because it might be a tragedy. That's something to consider. But we have to find meaning. And these religious narratives provide order to the chaos. They are epochs in time. And Peterson describes the North Star, how it is a fixed point in the chaos, and why so many were able to use it as a guide. Having a fixed point gives us aim in life and goals, and ultimately meaning. So you have to find your North Star. Think of that famous Disney song from Pinocchio, "When You Wish Upon a Star." That is wishing a point of fixed aim, which goes back to Peterson's rule about imagining who you could be and aiming single-mindedly at that. In order to do that, though, you need to have a deep sense of meaning and be able to parse the chaos from the order, or you can get derailed far too easily. And this brings me to the main point of Peterson's lecture, and one that has such deep, deep resonance with me. And that's music. Music is meaning. We are all struggling for that deep sense of meaning. But Peterson asks, what does it even mean to be meaningful? If you're a nihilist, there is no meaning. And that makes a person resentful and dangerous. But a person with meaning, and who understands his or her meaning, has hope and aim and trajectory. It's like possessing fire. Music creates meaning. And Peterson touches barely on this, but I will take it much further. When I was taking music theory classes at Northwestern University as a music major, the definition of music was most basically defined as organized sound. When I heard some of the very modern music of Steve Reich and John Cage, I wondered whether indeed this was music. But yet there was organized sound, as cacophonous as it might be. The reason is that most music is comprised of melody, harmony, and rhythm. It's those three components. And in music, as you listen, you often hear order from chaos, but yet you don't know where the melody or the rhythm is going to take you. So there's always an element of surprise. Music is like a plant. It blooms into something while starting as a seed. And music is not representational like other art forms, such as, say, a sculpture or a painting, which is tangible. So why is music so enrapturing? Well, because it creates meaning. Peterson has talked about maps of meaning and patterns. Music is comprised entirely of patterns and layers of patterns. Most composers write music vertically, meaning they hear instruments and notes and chord changes, and they make changes with one another in time. And they compose around that harmonic structure. But Mozart could compose one single instrument all the way through a piece horizontally to the very end, because he could hear it in his head. And then he could go back and take another instrument and do the exact same thing, writing completely horizontally. He knew where the patterns were going already. If you've seen the iconic movie Amadeus, there's a great scene where the court composer, Salieri, has Mozart play one of Salieri's compositions. Mozart is able to identify precisely where the piece goes wrong, and he improvises it to fix it. And Salieri describes it as perfection. Watch in this scene when Salieri sees Mozart's original scores for the very first time. Take a look.
Astounding. It was beyond belief. These were first and only drafts of music. But they showed no corrections of any kind. Not one. He had simply written down music already finished in his head. Page after page of it, as if he were just taking dictation. And music, finished as no music is ever finished. Displace one note, and there would be diminishment. Displace one phrase, and the structure would fall. it was clear to me. That sound I had heard in the Archbishop's palace had been no accident. Here again was the very voice of God.
Salieri is describing in Mozart's music, what he's describing is that it was divine. It had no mistakes, no corrections. It was just in his head. And the music would have diminishment and then resolution and center around a single phrase. As he says, it was the voice of God. He was staring at it through his own mental prison. This is because music has meaning. It has patterns in it that are the very DNA of God. And because music has these patterns, it grips you, it compels you. Think of the more modern music that has a beat that moves you. Maybe it's Al Green or Barry White for you boomers, or a DJ like Tiesto. Your body is aligning with that musical pattern. I'm so in love with you. Whatever you want to do. You see what I mean? Music is highly mathematical. And because of that, it contains mathematical patterns. So your body naturally aligns with it. It makes sense to you even if you don't know the song. It's that combination of order and chaos, the yin and the yang, the Taoist symbol. This is the opposite of nihilism. This is the grand order, the grand design, the grand narrative. That God has created something so powerful, but yet it can only be experienced as a revelation. It cannot be drawn or held. It can only be felt and repeated. It is abstract and non-representational. So therefore, the world is patterns too. How we navigate our lives is aligning with the world's patterns to parse chaos from the order. So we have to find that melody and the various layers of harmony. You row with the current, not against it. And think about a musical experience. Your body aligns with it, even though you don't understand why. You put your inhibitions and your fears aside. It transcends your doubts. And in this process, it points towards a truth that is truer than anything you've ever felt before. It's like the most honest word you've ever heard uttered. And that truth eviscerates mortality. Because that truth has been true for eons. The compositions of Bach and Mozart and Beethoven exceed all others. And what do these composers largely write about? The divine, God, worship. Think of Haydn's Creation, Bach's Mass in B minor. These composers were channeling the divine truth they knew that was true. And it has been true for millennia. These composers may have died in their mortal bodies, but their music is transcended. And so concerts, Peterson argues, are like a form of worship in many ways. Everyone is on the same page, sharing the same truth. Everything and everyone are working in tandem. Peterson says that he may see someone else in the crowd who happens to be aligning with the music the same way you are.